enemy just backs off and you just wasted some time. Or maybe you're preparing for a fight at Dragon and you recall and turns out you're 100 gold short of what you would need to complete your item, and 100 gold is just too much for you to sit at base and wait, and you have to settle in for components or worse items. Well, this is a common problem that I see happen to many people, and it even happens to me. And there are ways for you to speed yourself up and get that extra camp, get that extra CS or that little bit of gold and time that will allow you to just open yourself up to a little bit more freedom to move around the map and perhaps be there at the right time a little bit faster than your opponent, and just be that guy that always has a heads up. The way to do this is going to be accelerating and, I guess you could say, min-maxing the way that you jungle. A lot of people jungle where they see fighting NPCs as a way where you can just basically AFK, not give it a whole lot of thought, and tab out, maybe do something else, watch a stream while you're playing, and that just doesn't work. You're not going to be able to be really good at the game if you keep doing that. Every time that you're jungling, you're going to have to be focused and be on top of your game. Now, since I'm not going to have a visual representation, what I'm going to do is give you a breakdown of how to do this on the most common meta junglers right now. And first off, let's start with Smite. Now, since you're going to be jungling, all these champions are going to carry Smite, and you want to make sure that you use your Smite appropriately. Here's an example. If you're playing a champion like Elise in human form, your Q will do more damage based on how much health the monster has. You don't want to throw Smite then Q, because that would be counterproductive towards the damage that your Q is dealing. You want to throw your Q out, wait for it to hit, and then go off with your Smite, so that when you switch to your spider form, you get that extra damage for the missing HP. Now that's a little bit breakdown of the Smite, and the Smite obviously applies to many champions, and I'll just use Elise as an example. But make sure that you use your Smite and keep in mind how much damage it has, so that you don't overcap it or deal way too much over it. If your Smite's dealing 700 damage, you don't want to smite the target when it has 500. You want to make sure you smite it when it has, say, 770, if you know that there's nobody around to contest it, so that your next auto attack or your next spell, your next tick of whatever damage you're using is going to finish it off. Now let's break down the champions one by one. The first one is going to be Elise. Elise has a lot of different ways to accelerate her jungling. The first one is going to be your Q. Now your Q obviously in human form does more damage when the champion has higher HP, so every time that you're gonna be in human form, make sure that you throw your Q out first, or if you're gonna throw out your spiderling, which is fine, make sure that you're close enough, or throw the spiderling in a way that the Q hits before the spiderlings hit, so that you get a little bit more damage. Same goes with your reverse in spider form Q. Make sure that you have as much damage dealt as possible to the target before you go for that execute Q. It does more damage based on how much missing HP it has. If you know that there's nobody around, you're going to want to use your Smite before using your spider form Q. That way it has even less health, and that way you deal even more damage to it, as opposed to doing Q and then last hitting it off with Smite. See what I mean? It'll take more time just because of the way the spells work. The next one is going to be your spiderlings. This is a bit of a tricky one, because particularly in the level 1, your first camp, you're going to start it with spiders, and you want to throw out your volatile spiderlings as soon as possible, because they last like 3 seconds. So you want to make sure that you don't throw it as soon as the camp spawns. You throw it 2.5 seconds before the camp spawns in that direction, so that the cooldown comes up a little bit faster, and you might have another spell rotation of it for the camp if you need it. Next is going to be your cocoon. Now the cocoon is a bit of a tricky one, because this only applies if you're utilizing the mastery oppressor, the one that deals damage, increased damage to targets that are crowd control. If you know that there's nobody around and you have mana to spare, so you have blue buff, go ahead and throw out your cocoon at the monster. That way it's stunned, and then you throw out your spell rotation and it'll deal a little bit more damage. That 2.5, I believe, 2.5% more damage might make the difference if you can pull it off in every single camp. And that just might up to 1 or 2 more seconds of time that can make the difference between getting spotted in a ward or not. And then the final one, which I should have covered maybe earlier, is going to be your passive. Your passive is your volatile spiderlings, and you want to have as many of these out as possible, because the more that you have out, the more damage that you can deal. Instead of just being you attacking, you have 2 to 3 little more spiders attacking you. Obviously, you'll have 4 in the later stages of the game, but in the early parts, you want to have them out as much as possible. You got to keep a balance between it though, because in the early stages, if you tank the monster yourself, you're going to suffer a lot of damage. But if you don't, if you have the little spiderlings tank it, you'll take less damage but clear it slower. So you got to find a little bit of a balance. And one other point that I forgot to mention is that your volatile spiderlings, your spider frenzy I think it's called in spider form, is also an auto attack reset. You want to be utilizing this as such because it is very important. It'll also speed up your jungling, just like every other thing. And if it wasn't very obvious, which I should have mentioned before, use your spells when they're off cooldown. If you're going to be using them, make sure you spam them quickly. That way you jungle fast. The next one is going to be Gragas. Let's start things off this time around with your passive. Now, the passive is only important for your sustain, not so much for the quickness of your clear. Make sure that you use your abilities when your passive is up. For example, in the level 1, if you're, say, starting golems or krugs, instead of attacking the camp immediately with your body slam, barrel, or whatever it is, probably start body slam, by the way, it's a little bit better. Wait for you to take a little bit of damage, initial damage, and then utilize your body slam, or utilize whatever ability you're planning on using, because that way you'll get that passive tick and heal up a little bit more, mitigating some of the damage and increasing your sustain throughout the jungle. For your Q, make sure that you always detonate the barrel when it's at fully charged. You can let it detonate by itself. Unless you're really high level and you know for a fact that you're not going to need that extra couple of ticks to finish the camps off, just let it blow up by itself. Lastly, your W, just use it when the monsters are going to attack you. So when you see that monster wind up, charge for an attack, that's when you chug your W. In combination with all your other spells, you can use that to also mitigate the damage and increase your sustain. Sustain is very important to making it to these fights quicker and being healthier, strong enough to move around the map and contest. Your body slam, same thing. Use this ability to mitigate the damage of the monsters. You can also kite around the minions really well. Now this applies to all the champions, which means that you auto attack, take a little bit of a step backwards outside of the camp, moving yourself and positioning towards your next objective, so that eventually by the time you finish the camp, instead of killing the monsters in the exact same location where they spawned, you kill it a couple of inches further away, which they can add up to being there faster and at your next location. Now we'll go on to Graves. And Graves is a pretty simple one. Your passive, which is just your buckshot, your gun in general, it'll deal more damage the closer it is to the target based on the spray of the shotgun, because you don't want to miss out on those bullets. So the most important thing is positioning yourself where the bullets are hitting everything. Now, if you can afford tanking the monsters, which means getting really up close in melee range, not necessarily melee range, but the range where all your pellets hit, you're going to want to do that. If you can't, make sure that the spray hits all the other monsters. You can kite it really effectively that way, to the point where you don't take any damage and you don't need any other potions. As for the spells, make sure that your Q hits all the monsters as quickly as you can, and it doesn't really matter if it detonates quickly or not, because the damage will still be there and the cooldown will go off regardless of if it explodes instantly or not. You don't need to use your smoke screen unless you really have mana to spare. And make sure that you use your E, which is your dash and auto attack reset, as effectively as possible, which is when you are at 1 charge, not at 0, not when you're reloading. Use it when you're at 2 charges, you auto attack, then you dash, so that you get more uptime of shooting, as well as keeping your passive up. If you really want to, make sure that you can keep that passive going throughout the jungle by constantly using your dashes or using your smoke grenade. I think that's what it's called actually. Your smoke, to just chuck it around and make sure that you're constantly using spells and keeping that passive up, because what that allows you to do is if you have that increased tankiness for the next camp that you show up in, you can afford to tank it better and deal as much pellet damage as possible. Next is Kindred, and Kindred's a pretty straightforward one. which is the passive doesn't really have anything to do with you, but your Q. You want to use your Q, again, to kite the monsters really well, because that allows you to take less damage. It's pretty straightforward. Use it when all the monsters are in sight and make sure that you can hit as many targets as possible. You don't want to go for a hop that only hits 2 targets instead of 3. Your W, which is the main one that people mess up. If you jump over a wall and at the same time throw a W, Wolf will not go around. He will stay attacking over the wall and he will do 0 damage. Wait until you're over the wall until you actually use Wolf. The second component, which is the most important one, is your sustain. You need to constantly be moving as Kindred. Do not stay still. Always move. You auto attack, you move. You auto attack, you move. It's called orb walk, A walk, whatever you want to call it. Always do it. And in between your auto attacks and your downtime is when you want to use your Q, because your Q, you can't be auto attacking while you're jumping around in Q. So you go in, you jump, you Q with your jump. I guess that your Q is your jump. You Q, you press your W, then you auto attack, walk back, then Q again. Auto attack, walk back, Q again. And that's how you do it. Your E, if you have the mana, go ahead and use it. Obviously, you want to use it on the target that has the most HP. If you don't have the mana to spare, don't bother using it. But if you do, by all means, go for it. But only do it if you know that, for example, nobody's going to come contest you, because the last thing you want to do is show up at a camp that you're trying to take, or say you're counter jungling and you use your spell rotation, all of it, on the camp. Somebody comes around and you don't have the tools to defend yourself. You can get caught, or you might miss out on the opportunity of getting a kill. Next, Lee Sin. This is a less of a common jungler, but nonetheless one that's really important. Your passive, really important. Always utilize this. This is a really strong boost of attack speed. So you want to use, say, your Q, auto, next. Auto, next. If you're really good at Lee Sin, by the way, you can squeeze in 3 auto attacks in between each spell. And that will increase the damage that comes from your Q, because your Q also happens to be an execute. That means that it'll deal more damage based on the missing HP that the target has. You can only squeeze in 3 auto attacks in your Qs if you start at really up close. You can't Q and then walk up to it, auto attack 3 times. You have to Q and basically be attacking right away. Next one is your safeguard, and again, you want to be utilizing this in combination with your passive. Keep your passive up and your spell rotation proper so that you always have your passive attacking. You're going to have some downtime in the early game just because of the cooldowns being pretty high. You want to use your safeguard, or I believe it's Iron Will, the one that gives you spell vamp, in combination with your E and Q so that you increase your sustain. As the levels go on, you're not going to need the sustain to go through the jungle, but early on you might want to start out with W, you shield yourself, auto, Iron Will, then you use, say, your E, your Tempest, your Cripple, do that, auto, passive, slow it, and then you go off with your Q. That way your Q deals massive damage. Or if you feel fancy, you can start off with Q, use everything in the spell rotation really quickly, and then finish it off. Once you get the hang of it on Lee Sin, you'll be able to squeeze in more spells, and when you understand how much damage you can deal, you don't have to be utilizing your passive every single time. But it will help you out very much so in the early game, especially if you're new to Lee Sin. Then Nidalee. Now, with the current nerfs to the Nidalee traps, I believe that you probably just have to start with Q. And similar to Elise, where you want to throw out your Spiderling as early as possible when you know that the monster isn't up, but when you know it's about to spawn, so that it spawns as soon as your spear hits it, you want to stand far back, really far back as possible before you chuck out your spear. And this is going to increase, obviously, the amount of damage that you deal to it, and it'll increase your clearing speed. If you want to start traps, just remember that you don't have an auto attack on traps anymore, so I'm not sure why. That would probably be a little bit of a weaker start right now. But make sure that you throw your Q out quickly, that way the cooldown comes back up. The passive isn't really anything that will help you out too much, but just make sure that you use your execute and your Q and your pounce as much as possible when your targets are marked. That way you get the increased damage and the lower cooldown. As for your pounce, obviously make sure that you aim your pounce in the direction where it hits as many targets as possible. If there's only one target, don't worry about it, but if you're killing raptors, try to line it up that it hits as many targets as possible. If you get more kills, that'll reset the cooldown of it and you'll be able to spam it a little bit more. Remember to use your Q, by the way, when the target is very low. In the early game, it doesn't really matter, but you want to use the Q after your E and after your W. That way it'll deal more damage. Remember, it's an execute. Please keep in mind that you have to use your executes when the targets are lower HP, as opposed to just jumping right away and queuing from the get-go. Unless you already know for a fact that whatever target you're going to be attacking is going to take 2 spell rotations of your execute spell, no matter at what damage you use it on, then you're going to want to save the spell. Your E, again, make sure it's as many targets as possible. And lastly, your ultimate is an auto attack reset. Same with your Q. So you want to combo this together so that you get the most auto attacks reset possible while your mark is still intact. So a good example is you show up to a camp, you throw a spear at it, you pounce to it, auto, or use your E, auto attack, Q it, switch forms, use traps or whatever other spells you're going to use, your heal, auto attack, keep auto attacking until the passive is about to run out. There's a little counter, by the way, where you can see when the passive is going to run out. Then you switch back forms to keep resetting that auto attack and making sure that you speed yourself up. And finally, Rek'Sai. This is a really fun one now. Your passive doesn't really count a whole lot in by itself, but in combination with your other skills, it certainly does. Your Q is an auto attack reset. Make sure that you use it as such. You need to get to the camp and you auto attack it, then you Q. This happens a lot where it's mistimed when you use your unburrow. By the way, if you didn't know, your burrow duration increases with how close you are to the target. If you're right next to them, right underneath, it'll deal 1 second of a knockup. If you're further away, it'll deal a little bit less. Make sure that you get that full duration if possible, if you need the sustain, because the damage doesn't change. So if you're worried about taking too much damage, make sure you get that 1 second knockup. Or if you say you want to go for a scuttle and keep it in one place. What happens is when you unburrow, people end up just immediately using your Q instead of waiting for the target to be hit with a regular auto attack before going for the Q. While you're burrowed, you need to make sure that your Prey Seeker hits as many targets as possible as well. Now, while it has a short cooldown, you don't necessarily need to worry about shooting it from a long range distance. It might often be beneficial for you to just get up close and just shoot out the Prey Seeker right then and there so that it hits more targets. The more targets that all your AoE spells hit, the faster your clear will be. Remember that. Finally, onto your E, your little bite. This is one that I often see misused. Watch yourself playing Rek'Sai and notice that almost in every single time that you're clearing a camp, the cooldown of E is so high that you only get 1 bite. You're not going to be using multiples, you're going to get 1. So why use the bite right from the get-go when you can use it when it's max and it deals the full true damage and a lot more damage? So that's what you need to be doing. You need to be using your bite when you have 100% fury, and it'll deal a lot more damage. And utilize your bite in between your auto attacks. You bite, your normal rotation, as Rek'Sai would be, you tunnel in, you throw out your Q, you knock them up, auto attack, then you use your Q auto attack reset 3 times, then when the 3rd auto attack has gone through, you use your E and then you continue attacking. That's if you have 100% fury, so you should have come in with a little bit more fury. If not, just keep auto attacking until your fury bar is at 100%. You can also build a little bit of a tunnel network across all your camps to connect them to make sure that you clear faster. And it's kind of like just taking a little train, a little subway. You just press it, move camp to camp, and it'll increase your clear time by quite a bit. And your ultimate, well, you can obviously just use that to get back to the jungle and move around. Now, those are the very little things that can help you increase your clear speed throughout the early game and even in the mid game that can really make a difference when it's added up. You won't notice it at first, but once you master it and you get it down, you'll feel that you're often faster than the other guy. You often get to make the first move, and in a game like League of Legends, whoever makes the first move often just wins the game. Hope you enjoyed this video, and see you all next time.